Well, welcome back to the show. Let's look a little bit closer at this air raid offense and the history of the air raid offense. I was able to catch up with Mike Leach's mentor and co-creator and a good friend of mine, Hal Mumme, the former head coach at Kentucky. Mumme and Leach coached together at 3 different universities, and it all started at Iowa Wesleyan in a resume that came across Mumme's desk.
He had gone to BYU, and so that caught my attention. And then I called him, and he had just recently gotten a law degree from Pepperdine. So I knew he was smart. And I asked him if he liked the BYU offense, and he goes, yeah, that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, is I heard that you were running a similar deal. And so I said, well, this job pays $12,000 a year. And he said, well, I only make 6 out here at College of the Desert. So he was like the perfect guy. He was smart. He wanted to coach the O-line the way we wanted to do it. And he was the only guy I could talk to who would double his salary. I had brought 2 linemen with me from Copper's Cove that knew the offense and knew how I liked to play. And so I put them in charge of kind of instructing him. And he got it down pretty good. And the first day of practice, I went and sat in on his meeting. And the second day of practice, I went and sat in on his meeting, and then I didn't go back anymore because I knew after 2 days he was really smart and he was going to innovate this.
Do you think it really took you guys to craft and form the air raid offense that we see today?
3 years. The first game that was really an air raid game, that what people see and know as air raid right now, was August 31st, 1991. And we had gotten so good so fast at Iowa Wesleyan, none of the little schools would play us anymore because we were independent. And so we had to play Truman State, which in those days was called Northeast Missouri, but they were the number 10 team in the nation, a division above us. They were in NCAA Division II, and we were NAIA. And we fell behind 7-24 at halftime. And I went in the locker room, and the quarterback came up to me. He said, you don't have to say anything to him. We're going to win this game. And you could just tell that playing fast and doing all the stuff that we had been doing before, and then we added the speed of the game to it, and you could tell it was just sapping them. And we came back and won the game 34-31.
I think this offense that you guys were able to create has been able to be so successful at so many different schools.
Well, I think it's because, number one, it's fun. And people always talk about our coaching tree and how many guys that played for us or coached with us are now head coaches other places, and they're running air raid. And so the reason they do that is because they had so much fun when they were assistants or players, and they don't want to do it any other way. And so that, I think, is part of it. And so it keeps the attention of the players because practice is not drudgery. It's actually fun. And the second thing is I think it's because it's so rep-oriented. It's just all about reps. And you used to hear me say this when we were at McMurray, that, you got to have a great capacity for boredom to be in our offense, because you're just going to do the same things over and over again every day. And you can't get bored with it. You have to just keep trying to be better at this little drill than you were yesterday. And then the last thing is, I think we weren't the first, but we were one of the first groups back in the late 80s, early 90s, to really start making everybody defend the whole field.
Mike got hired at Mississippi State on a lot of national media. A lot of people didn't think that the air raid offense could resonate in the SEC. That's been a pretty traditionally dominant defensive league, but clearly got off to a great start last week. Why do you think, again, the system that has resonated so many other places can be successful at Mississippi State?
Well, when he took that job, he called me and I said, yeah, by all means, you should take that job. He said, why do you think, what's the number one thing? I said, well, you've always had a great offense. We know the offense works, and it'll work at any level, but you can't always get defensive players. And defense is more about the players on the field. Offense is more about the execution. And at Mississippi State, they've had a long tradition of having great defense. Even when they haven't had good offense, they've had great defense. And I just thought, I said, when you were at Texas Tech and you went around Texas trying to recruit a linebacker, you were always talking to the 4th best linebacker, because the first 3 were going to go to Texas, OU, and A&M. And so you were never better than 4. And I said, at Washington State, it was probably worse than that. So you go to Mississippi State, there's a ton of good football players that are defensive guys in the state of Mississippi, and you won't be number 4.
The one thing that makes this offense run is a quarterback. I know you've had very successful ones. Mike's had very successful ones. Were you able to see KJ Costello last weekend? So what did you think of him?
Yeah, I did. And I had talked to Mike and a couple of staff members about him before, and they were excited about him. Of course, they had a history with him, not coaching him, but playing against him when he was at Stanford. So they liked him, and they were glad that he, decided to transfer there. And so that was fortunate for him. But he reminded me a lot of with his pocket feet, he reminded me a lot of Tim Couch, the guy we had at Kentucky.
I could talk football with Hal Mumme all day, and I thought it was a really cool kind of connection that Pittman and Mike Leach were both offensive line coaches before they got into head coaching. And another fun tidbit is that Arkansas offensive coordinator Kendall Briles is a part of that air raid tree kind of by default. When Mike Leach was at Texas Tech, his dad, Art Briles, coached under Mike Leach, learned the air raid offense, and then, of course, took it to Baylor. So there's a lot of air raid influence in what Kendall Briles wants to do. Now, I know Mike Irwin was really jealous and probably wanted to be a part of this interview. The thing is, the last time Mike and I were in Starkville, Hal came up and had dinner with us, and they spent the whole time talking about the Alamo. So I don't know how successful of an interview it would have been if Mike was included.
Yeah, we'd talk Alamo. He was born in San Antonio. We're both Texas kids. I mean, about the same age. Davy Crockett generation had the little coonskin hat. I lost mine 60 years ago. He still got his. I think we got a photo. Look at that. What kind of a guy is cool enough to show up at the Alamo wearing that hat, full Davy Crockett outfit, and he's pointing. He's pointing over the east wall and saying, hey, they're coming from that direction, that direction. Cool guy.
Yeah, the 3 things that Hal Mumme loves: football, the Alamo, and Jimmy Buffett. All right, coming up after the break, our Tara Talmadge is going to go behind enemy lines, talk a little bit more about what makes Mississippi State run under Mike Leach. That's after the break. Stick around.